This is Reality with Partiality. Today in studio, all the way from Japan, Miss Cecy Castillo, my guest. How are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Percy. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Um, well, it's good to have you on the set. And we've been working on this interview for a while. You want to lead off with, making your remarks, or is that how you want to approach this? To lead off with a statement?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the invite. It is
Mm-hmm.
definitely a first for me in terms of this interview. So it's definitely something. It gave me something to reflect on, right? So I'm happy to be here
Yes,
with you.
indeed. And the country, including myself, I'm proud of you. I believe you're there. You have your family there with you.
Yes, yes, I do.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, so tell us about, your journey, starting with your upbringing, your early childhood experience.
Hmm. Okay, well, I'm from San Ignacio, so all the way
Mm-hmm.
from West, and
Okay.
born and raised in San Ignacio. I went to Sacred Heart Primary School and
Mm-hmm.
Sacred Heart College. And
Okay.
there, I come from a single parent family, but I was
Okay.
raised in an extended family. So um,
Okay.
I never felt that I was only from a single parent family because I was always surrounded by the extended family. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was my early childhood. Um, and later I moved from San Ignacio and went to Belize City. That was
Is
back
that
in
right?
2000. In 2000, the first cohort
Okay.
for the University of Belize after the amalgamation.
Mm. Okay.
And yeah, so there I did my associates and bachelor's degree at the University of Belize um,
Mm.
in
Mm.
both. Uh, at high school, I was a triple major in science, so I did the all three sciences. Um, that was my science background. I've always been passionate about the science field and most so about
Mm.
biology, right? So Sacred Heart was a journey
Okay.
that started the whole science background that I have now. Moving to the University of Belize, I decided that physics wasn't
Mm-hmm.
my calling. So at the associate level,
Okay.
I
Okay.
did both biology and
Mm-hmm.
chemistry. But after associates, I
Mm.
decided chemistry wasn't really something I
Okay.
like. And so I ended up with a bachelor's in the biology program, right? Uh, and so
Mm.
that was my
Mm-hmm.
early background in terms of the
Yes. Yes.
sciences. Mm. Um,
You narrowed
move,
down and narrowed down and narrowed down some more. Mm-hmm.
right. So as I
So
found
you.
out what
So
I like, I started to narrow down. Yes.
yeah. So biology, bachelor's in biology, and then is that when you started your career?
No, so after doing my bachelor's in biology, I took a
Mm-hmm.
break from education, and yes,
Okay.
I started working, and my first real job, you can say, was being the environmental educator at the Belize Zoo and Tropical Education Center. So
Wow.
that's where I got exposed to Belize's wildlife, teaching
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
students that would visit the Belize Zoo about Belize's native
Mm-hmm.
animals. But also, I had the opportunity to design outreach programs that focus mostly on
Okay.
the human and wildlife conflict programs. At the time, I designed the
Mm-hmm.
human jaguar conflict program, and
Is that
also
right?
yes, and that took me to
Mm.
several communities, communities that
Mm-hmm.
perhaps I wouldn't have visited before. Otosha in
Yes.
the Toledo district,
O-
Corazon,
Okay.
Blue Creek, North
Mm-hmm.
and South. So I got exposed to remote villages, remote places in the country that were more prone to human animal conflicts. Um, and
Mm.
and
Mm.
my goal at that time was um, to connect humans to the importance of wildlife, and try to mitigate the conflicts that we have by designing solutions or programs that can decrease that. So that was my journey in the conservation field. All along I was being prepared to become a medical doctor, right? That was the
Okay.
biology science background.
Mm. Mm.
But at that point, I took a break because I wasn't too sure if I wanted to do medicine. And
Yes.
entering the conservation field, that's when I decided this will be the area that I will pursue further. Um, of course, I have always been more called to the marine environment. I've
Mm-hmm.
and the coastal communities. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I left Belize to do my master's degree in Barbados at University of the West Indies, I
Mm-hmm.
ventured into the Marine and Coastal Resource Management Program at UWI.
Okay.
And that is where
Okay.
I started my studies and my my interest, my professional development started in terms of the marine and coastal um, realm per se. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I did my studies there. One of
Mm-hmm.
my research at the master's level was actually
Mm-hmm.
looking at the amalgamation of what was back then Friends of Nature and another organization, TASTE. I can remember the acronym TASTE, that later developed
Mm-hmm.
into the Southern Environmental Association, and looking at how the amalgamations of these institutions, how it would benefit co-management of marine protected areas in Belize, right? At least in that
Mm-hmm.
context. Um, so finishing my master's degree, I entered into the teaching career. I started
Okay.
again. I went back home, west. I went west. I started
Okay.
my teaching career at Sacred Heart Junior College. And at the
Mm.
same time, I was also doing part time at the University of Belize. Um,
Okay.
right. And so that was how it all began my in terms of my journey with the University of Belize. I later
Mm. Mm.
moved to UB full time, and where I
Okay.
have been there, Mr. Percy, for over 15 years with the University
Mm.
of
Mm.
Belize.
Mm. And
Yeah.
your area, your faculty is biology,
Okay. So
sciences?
I'm in the science department, but I was hired in the natural
Mm-hmm.
resource management program. Um,
Okay.
I have served in many capacities over the 15 years at UB. I was
Mm-hmm.
first I came in as faculty, and I was given the additional responsibility of being the program coordinator for the natural resource management program. Um,
Yes.
and over the years, I had the privilege to also be the chair of the science department. Um, but my substantive post is lecturer at the university within the natural resource
Mhm.
management program. Um, yeah.
Does the program have a practical side to it, like an internship?
Yes.
The natural resource. Yeah.
Right. So the natural resource management program, from when I
Mhm.
started to where it is now, I think we have been evolving at the
Okay.
university. There's
Okay.
progress, slow, but progress, nevertheless. And I think
Yes.
that it has been progressively moving. I think the entire university now, not only the program, we
Mhm.
have been
Mhm.
progressively moving towards research, because when I
Mm.
started the university, even as a student, when
Okay.
I was a student at the university,
Mhm.
it was primarily
Mhm.
a teaching institution. Over
Okay.
the years, it has transformed, and we're
Mhm.
slowly doing more and more research. We're building
Okay.
capacity in faculty,
Mhm.
in students, also the facilities that we need to
Mhm.
actually do research, and funding. That's one of the major constraints in Belize when it comes to
Yes.
doing
Okay.
research. Um,
Yes.
Right. During my time as chair, I know we had this opportunity. I think it was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Percy, when our paths met,
Mhm.
um, that
Yes. Yes.
we then had an opportunity through the efforts of Dr. Aaron Lewis and Dr. Abel
Mhm.
Cardenas, that we were
Mhm.
able um, to submit a proposal to the International Atomic Energy Agency, and we got funding
Mhm.
that was able to equip the university, our programs, with equipments and building capacities, in terms of
Okay.
research. And that, I think, um, was one of the major um, driver into the slow
Okay.
progress of the quality of research that we can now do at the University of Belize. One project led to another. I helped to co-write the second project, and
Mhm.
it untapped the, the various um, research areas that we can now do. We started with heavy metals, and we expanded into equipping the laboratory with equipments for ocean acidification, blue carbon testing, and we have also been very prominent in microplastic research since then. So over the years, we saw slow growth, not only getting the equipments, but ensuring that faculty was also equipped with the necessary background, the skills that we can do meaningful research. And the idea of that was always to produce to hone in or to foster evidence-based decision making. So
Mhm.
the idea was always that the university can produce research that can help policymakers make informed decisions. Um, of course, that's the
Mhm.
goal, right? That's the bigger goal. That's where we're working towards. And I think that has always been my drive as a faculty, or i- if I have an administrative post, it has always been a drive that I believe that we are the national university, and that we should be contributing um, towards the sustainable development of the country, by partnering with various government or NGOs, so that we can have the necessary
Yes.
data that we need to make decisions. And that is still, I believe, one of our biggest challenges in country. So yeah, so
Okay.
that has been um, my I think the highlight of being at the University of Belize, seeing that growth in research and seeing how we are building towards positioning the university in being able to produce that the type of research we actually need to make informed decisions, especially as it comes to the um, environmental management, which is my area of expertise. Um, so yeah, and after 15 years, I think of being at UB, um, and during the COVID, it was mostly during the COVID lockdown. I
Mm.
I started to reflect on my own personal growth, um,
Okay.
and looking at what I initially had planned to do, before
Hmm.
life happened and all the responsibilities
Yes.
happened.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right. And at that point, Mr. Percy, is when I decided that I should continue my studies. Of course,
Okay.
at this point, life has changed. It wasn't like when I did my bachelor's and my master's, being single, without family. So at this point
Ye-
now, I had a family,
okay.
and
Yes.
when
Yes. Yes.
yeah, so it was something to discuss. It was sacrifices to be made, and the opportunity came.
Yes.
Right, the opportunity came that I was able to apply to pursue a PhD, um, and through JICA,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
I eventually
Uh-huh.
I was successful in attaining the scholarship, and I was accepted to two universities. Well, three
Oh, I see.
universities.
You had choices. Okay,
Yes,
you had choices. Okay.
three. All three. But
Hmm.
in the end, I decided to do more of the social aspect to climate change, um, research, and so I decided um, to accept the University of Kyoto, or Kyoto University's
Okay.
offer
Hmm.
in terms of a place at the university. I
Yes.
started the doctoral program at the Graduate School of Global Environmental Studies. And
Hmm.
due to my previous work, so at the university, as well as private practice, I was able to work with several fishing communities over the years. And because of that, and also in discussion with people working in the field, it was either the technical, hands-on type of research in terms of looking at ocean acidification, or does Belize need more of someone that understands the social structures that either enable or constrain how we cope or adapt to the changes that we're facing. Um, and at the end, I believe we lack that area, and so this is the area that I'm now looking at the social structures that um, can either enable or constrain how we cope with environmental changes. How we speak of climate change sciences in terms of the technical aspect, but in reality, we
Hmm.
forget that at the end of the day, when we speak of climate change mitigation or climate change adaptation, it all boils down to behavioral changes. And so how do we implement interventions, policies that will actually support the group that we're trying to assist in building adaptive capacity towards glo- um, envi- towards environmental changes. Um, so that is where I am today, Mr. Percy, looking at the
So
social
you're
infrastructure of it.
you're you're still grappling, or you're already immersed in your thesis on this?
Oh, okay. So I'm now in the third year of the program. It
Okay.
so I'm coming to the end of the program.
So you came home to do your underground thesis portion of it, or how?
Definitely, definitely. Even though I'm here in Japan, my focus has been Belize. I'm interested a lot of what's happening at home, simply
Yes.
because when we speak climate change adaptation, when we speak climate change, a lot of things, a lot of national reports, we're still basing on what happens in other parts of the world, in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
example, and we still
Mm-hmm.
lack the data we need in all aspects, not only social, right? To
Yes.
really hone in and to know exactly what are these changes we're facing as a country, and what are these impacts that it's having to Belize, um,
Right.
and finding solutions that would be local, right? Local solutions. And so yes, my research took me home. I went to both Sarteneja and Dangriga. Those are my study sites. So two
Yes.
fishing communities in Belize, and focusing on the human aspect, right? So the human dimension. Not um, while my previous background or my previous preparation was about the ecological aspect, understanding the issues
Mm-hmm.
in that realm. I have now delved into the human component of it all.
With a view to educate and and what, formulate policy,
Okay,
better
so
policy maybe.
I think at this point I'm sitting um, not only in uh, we want to understand what's happening on the ground, what
Mm-hmm.
influences the decision making
Mm-hmm.
of this community in terms of fisher folks. What are their needs? Um, so it is in both. It can be both, right? It's the intersection of science and policy, I believe, as well as practice in terms of communities. So how can we support communities? How can that information also assist in better policies? And it, when I reflect on what I've been doing all along, it is actually looking at the science and communities, and attempting to also making the connection with policy to influence policy, because we do need more policies that consider these elements. So I would say
Yes,
the
but as well,
intersection of practice and policy.
I not only our local fisher folk, but we share water catchments with Honduras and Guatemala, right? So it's has that transborder aspect, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then they come sometimes allegedly to illegally fish in our waters, uh, i.e., down
Mm-hmm.
there by the South Stool.
Right.
Are you? I mean, what are the folks? I mean, I'm saying what your findings is so far. Is the stock depleted? And if so, um, are you on the way to making recommendations? I know there was once upon a time, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Because you said you're working with the human aspect, right? The social.
Right. Right.
But still you're an environmentalist. So you can educate about what we need to do at the bottom of the sea. um, where are we? Where are we really? Where are we? Are we are we in dire straits? Are we in good shape? Are the policies working? Um, what's your assessment so far today, or if you have one?
Okay. I think you have several questions there. Uh,
Okay,
and
okay.
definitely in terms of the stock assessment, I I can give you my personal opinion, but my research does not look at the stock assessment per se, right? So that would be
Mm, mm.
better left to other experts that are
Okay,
looking at the fish stock. Um, in
okay.
terms
Mm-hmm.
of what I'm doing, there's this line of research that looks at the how do we use local knowledge um, for informed decision making, right? So it's not always the Western science. I mean, when you say stock assessment, it can be based on the scientific or the Western science that they refer to. A scientist going and monitoring how the population is changing over time, as well as the local knowledge on the ground based on the people who actually use the resources. So, in this case, the fishers, what are their experiences? What are they seeing changing? And that is more into the realm that I'm going into or I'm in terms of the local
Yeah.
knowledge. And how can we then bridge that local knowledge now with the scientific or the Western science to
Mm-hmm.
drive policy? And for a country like Belize that we lack resources, it is very important for us to also include local knowledge in decision making. And research has shown
Mm.
that local knowledge is just as valuable as the Western science because people who are on the ground are noticing these changes. In fact, when we have researchers visiting and doing these studies, they rely a lot on the local people, right? And the fisherman will be able to tell you where we can find red snapper or where it has been depleted or where we can find the conchs or what's the movement of the lobster based on the weather. So they have what we call it's based on their
Yeah.
experience, right? Experiential knowledge. They didn't go to
Right,
school
right,
to
right,
study these things, but they know, right? And that's
right,
the beauty of
right.
it. And so, how do
Okay.
we then use this local knowledge to look at potential policies? Um, Now, I think you also mentioned what was the next question, Mr. Percy? Sorry, I went off
Well, no,
tangent.
no, you didn't. No, you didn't. In fact, you brought us to focus into the human aspect, like you said of it. So those are your kinds of findings. You're finding that policymakers can draw more on uh, the hands-on experience of the fisher folk, right? That's what you're in effect saying.
Right. So that's one element. That's one element. That's in terms of how countries that are deficient in resources, we can make use of local
Mm-hmm.
knowledge to inform decision making. But
Mm-hmm.
apart from that, it is also looking at what are the social structures, maybe communication. How do fishers get informed about changes occurring? Um, and how does that influence what they do, uh, because this then impacts on the effectiveness of whatever programs, that management initiatives that would be implemented. um, and it's important to what this study really looks at, that it's important for us to understand our communities, the formal and informal institutions that influence how um, people behave as in terms of the
Yes.
decision making processes, so that we can have more effective programs on the ground, especially in the context of climate adaptation, per se.
Okay. So I guess it'll be two ways then. The learning, we can learn more from the folk on the ground, the fisher folk, and
Hmm.
then you as an expert can also impart a lot to them, right? From what you're studying and
Right.
finding, yes?
Right. So yeah, so it is both ways, or let's say, it takes not only the local knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because what what we found, or what the research, right, area,
Mm-hmm.
is that while fishers have the experiential knowledge, it
Mm-hmm.
might be confined. So there's still a need for exposure to other um, types of information, the scientific knowledge to enter these communities um, effectively for us to have change. Um, the change that we want. And when we speak of adaptation, or decision making, or the way communities respond to environmental changes, we
Yeah.
always think of it being pro environmental or adaptive responses. But in reality, depending on the social structures on the ground, it can also be maladaptive responses. And so it's
Yes.
very
Yes.
important um, for that intersection that I spoke about earlier, for science, or scientists, policymakers, and the communities to have those um, deliberate exchange of knowledge for us all to learn,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just the, I'll say, fisher folks because I'm working with fishers, but it can extend to many other sectors. It's
Right.
not only the resource users, but policymakers need to be informed, and the people on the ground can give them that information. The scientists have another type of information, and we need to integrate these so that we can have a clear picture, or a clearer picture of what's happening and how best to approach these situations. So it definitely
Okay.
speaks to also trust, Mr. Percy, because to have these types of knowledge exchanges, there needs to be trust between communities and the other actors. um, and so
Right.
how do we create this enabling environment so that um, we can have the type of adaptation that we seek, because it can be from incremental to transformative adaptation. But we do need to know what is on the ground, what is being supported on the ground.
So we have a policy. Do we have a policy?
For
Long term. Well,
um,
fishing.
for fishing or climate
I
adaptation.
mean, well,
We
climate
do have lots
adaptation.
of policies, you know. Belize is known for beautiful policies. The black and white. We're I would say a pioneer, or leaders in conservation when it comes to our policies. Um, when I started to do my research in terms of adaptation, I believe the country is still we're still working on that aspect, because most of the focus has been on climate mitigation. Um, so most of
Mhm.
the national strategies that we have in terms of climate, when it comes to climate change, would have spoken more to climate mitigation. But it is now, there's
Mhm.
no traction, and it's not only Belize. I think it is something globally, in terms of, we were always trying to first prevent the impacts of climate change. I think back in the 1980s, then we moved to trying to mitigate the impacts, and now we are at the point of adapting to the changes, right? So it is something that is still in its infancy in the country.
Okay. So, has the government been cooperative with you in terms of examining the policy that they have? It well, two-part question. The other part is, if you were to advise policymakers, uh, you know, is there any advice? I mean, what would you tell them?
Okay. If the first one, I didn't catch the first question, Mr. Percy.
Yeah, I'm asking if you get good cooperation from policymakers when you're doing your, as you do your thesis. Do you
Mhm.
get their cooperation? Because
Um,
they're an important stakeholder.
right. I can say I got support. Um, I think
Okay.
could have been more. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely
Mm-hmm.
I did get support for the research, and most importantly, because it is more of a study of a bottoms up look for at this point, in terms of I worked more with the
Yes.
communities. um, Most
Yes.
importantly, the communities were very receptive um, to
Mm-hmm.
participating in the research, and sharing
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and with us, right? And I say us because I did have students of the University of Belize that also assisted with the
Okay.
survey aspect.
Mm-hmm.
um, and we
Yes.
and we also got support from the Protected Areas Conservation Trust for the UB students part, for them to be involved in
Okay.
research. So yes, in part, I've gotten support from key stakeholders. Um, in terms of policy
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
advice, so far, I think it might sound like an old record, because it has been it's been something that has been said over and over again, and it is always about looking at how we operate with communities, and being responsive to their needs. And when we develop beautiful projects, that it should be something meaningful for the group that we're trying to assist, right?
Mm,
We
mm,
always
mm, mm.
I teach project management at UB, and so something with the students,
Yes.
um, that comes right back to circle, that I keep telling them, is always that when we are developing projects, it can be the it can be a beautiful idea, um, but if it's not seen as relevant to the beneficiaries,
Right.
then
Right. There has to be buy-in.
right, buy-in,
Right.
and to have buy-in, people need to see it as relevant to their
Mm-hmm.
needs. And so
Right.
whenever we do any initiative in Belize, as we start to look at how do we help to cope with these changes, whether it is livelihood diversification projects, um, or programs that we put in place, we need to really look at what are the
Mm-hmm.
barriers that would hinder people from taking the opportunity of these
Mm-hmm.
programs that we put in
Mm-hmm.
place. Um, to look at if is it accessible, are they aware of it, uh, what are the channels that they use to get information, so that we can have information relayed to the communities, uh, in a way that they can not only understand but to take advantage of the opportunities we put in place. So it's always to look at what are the needs of the communities and also bring them on board,
Mm-hmm.
and to have
Mm-hmm.
collaboration in the
Okay.
design of
Yes.
uh, programs. And that's a big thing right now globally, that how do we co-produce knowledge, how do we
Mm-hmm.
co-design um, programs, so that it can have
Mm-hmm.
not only the buy-in but also the meaningful change that we need, for us to actually say we are coping, adapting, to change the climate change impacts, environmental changes that we're seeing.
Okay. Well, before you give your parting shot, you have any comment about climate change impact and maybe the need for mitigation in this particular area?
In terms of climate change impacts, um, in the country, I think, again, we we need to have more studies for Belize. Definitely. For now, I know there are a couple people that are looking at, for example, coral bleaching. We have a lot of NGOs that look at that. At the University of Belize, we are being equipped to start looking at ocean acidification. But again, we're still in, like I said, we're still in the infancy stages to actually have data for Belize, for us to really hone in and not be using the global narratives per se.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so to go to that level, I think that we still need more data, and I think that as a country we're moving. I believe I saw news that we're starting to. I think it's the meteorological office getting technology that we can start looking at sea level rise. I mean, these are things that we
Mhm.
heard of occurring, affecting
Right,
maybe the
right, right,
Pacific
right.
Islands, um,
Mm-hmm.
that's visible. But in terms of Belize, we cannot
Mm-hmm.
really put a finger on it and say, by how much this has increased, or these are the
Yes.
impacts that, and it's
Yes.
very hard to link the changes that we're seeing. This is the hard part about climate change, right? And why it remains sometimes a bit abstract from local people,
Mm.
because it's very hard to link
Mm.
what we're seeing to climate change, because there are multi stressors impacting impacting us, right? So
Yes.
it's not. I mean, we have pollution. We have. If you speak to the fisherman, they'll say, you know what? It's coastal development, right? It's tourism. So we have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of stressors impacting our ecosystems, our societies, and so it's very difficult to really say climate change, right? It's the sole uh,
Mm.
reason
Right.
behind
Right.
such change,
Cars. Right. Right.
right? And
Okay.
right, yeah. And I just want to mention that you mentioned about climate change and the impacts, right? I want to just
Yes.
state that, climate change is a bit more
Mm-hmm.
abstract than the other environmental issues that we face. For example, water pollution, right? And
Okay.
we did a study, the university did a study for Belize, the State of the Environment
Mm-hmm.
Report 2024. And we are we are doing a lot, Mr. Percy, in terms of a country and collecting data, but it is
Mm-hmm.
fragmented, right? It's fragmented data, and
Okay.
sometimes we're collecting data that cannot be disaggregated for us to really say, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, the quality of our rivers has changed from this level to X level
Mm.
within the past 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
because while we're doing a lot, we're all doing it in silos, and we have not
I see.
made a standardized protocol. Well, now we have, but in the
I
past,
see.
right? In the past, we did not
Mm-hmm.
coordinate
Mm-hmm.
efforts. And I bring this up because
Yeah. Yeah.
this has been a challenge that was brought up not only for this report but the previous report. So it's about that was 2010. So 20 years, 20 years of us of the same issue.
Yes. Yes.
So in perspective, when
Mm.
we're dealing with
Mm.
climate change now, which is more of a relatively new thing that we have on our agenda, we have
Right.
more constraints than what has that. I mean, the foundation, right? We lack the foundation to really say what are these changes because of the lack of data infrastructure as a country.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and it's good that towards the end, I hope policymakers are listening, because there needs to be a lot of collaboration with private partners and so on, NGOs and so on, so we don't duplicate, so we share information, you know,
Mhm.
and we maximize on the talent pool and resources that we have.
Mhm. Right.
So your parting shot. What would be your
My parting shot. I can't. I think I've said enough, but I feel I think I said a lot, and I hope that I answered your questions, Mr. Percy. Definitely, when we are as professionals, we are constantly on the go, constantly doing things that we forget sometimes to sit back and reflect on what we're doing, our purpose, where we're going. some
Yes, yes,
where we came from.
yes, yes.
Definitely something that um, made me reflect a bit more.
Warm regards to your family, and I'm
Thank you, Mr.
aware that you've had to, you know, adapt to the culture there in Japan. But it seems to me that you're having a blast.
Definitely, I do enjoy the culture, and I'm very grateful to have this experience. Uh, and
Okay,
it's definitely new experiences, new learnings, not only academically, that I do hope that I can take back home and apply it.
okay, okay. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Percy.
Bye bye.
Bye.